Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the College of Continuing and Professional Studies webinar, Resolving Conflict During Trying Times. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Next slide. My name is Lisa Beckham, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. If you have any questions about this webinar or other programs that we offer, our contact information will be on the last slide of this presentation. Next slide. There are some logistical items that I'd like to discuss before we begin. I ask that you please submit your questions throughout the webinar so we can address them during the Q&A portion in the last 5 minutes of this presentation. To submit your questions, select the Q&A button in the bottom middle of the screen. Type your question and press send. Once you select the Q&A button in the bottom middle of the screen, the send button will appear at the bottom of the screen as well. There's also live captioning available for viewing towards the bottom of the screen. Next slide. We will send an email in the next few days with a link to the recording of this webinar. The link will be sent to the email address you submitted during registration. Next slide. I'd like to introduce the topic for today's webinar, Resolving Conflict During Trying Times. Difficult and uncertain times put us at a higher risk of relationship tension, resulting in conflicts. We are shorter fused, less tolerant, and therefore more at risk of being hooked by our emotions. The use of self-control and other self-management techniques is important to calming our emotions and strengthening relationships during this volatile time. In this webinar, we'll help you recognize your pressure points and current response to stress and conflict, identify what has worked for you in resolving past conflicts, collaborate to accomplish shared goals, lower defensiveness by understanding and meeting each other's needs, and also plan what you're doing to do differently to deter conflict from arising. It's an honor to introduce today's webinar presenter, Jean Morrison. Jean's expertise includes conflict resolution, team building, performance management, and people management. Jean is the president of the human resource management consulting firm, Morrison and Associates Incorporated, and a founding partner of Resolve, a consulting firm providing conflict management and professional training and development services. Welcome, Jean, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm really pleased to be spending some time with you today, helping you get comfortable in the uncomfortable world of conflict as we coexist as human beings, and to give you some ideas of how to navigate through conflict. Conflict is normal. It's inevitable, and even more inevitable during the time that we're in right now. Conflict can be, and I look for it to be, a catalyst for connecting with each other, for having conversations, and therefore collaborating to get on the other side of it so that we can continue on with our life and our work. Let me ask you, what is worse than dealing with conflict or having a difficult conversation in your personal or work life? What's worse is ignoring it and not having those conversations. Avoiding conflict gets in the way of running your business, running your life, and having your family. It multiplies 5 times if you avoid it. So research tells us if you sit on it, it will just get bigger. These are unprecedented times for us with this global pandemic, which has wreaked havoc both with our economy and has caused tragic deaths. With this situation, that puts us into extreme uncertainty and fear. And I should tell you that conflict is based in fear. So when we deal with conflict, What we're looking for as an end result as we move through it is to build trust, but it is steeped in fear. This is a time of great loss and grief on many levels. Grief for plans that we had, grief for opportunities lost. So a lot of the feelings that we're all feeling, when we kind of travel back to what is that feeling, it is often grief. This situation that we're in has created tremendous stress for all of us, and anxiety. We worry. We have insecurity, both financial insecurity, personal insecurity. With all of that, it feeds certain behaviors. This challenging time provides us with lots of reasons to be impatient, to be intolerant, to be more tense, and to then create more conflicts with each other. We're used to having answers, we don't. We're used to a routine that has changed drastically in so many ways for us. We're used to having one job, and now we're juggling, working from home, homeschooling, managing the home, caring for loved ones, and much, much more. There are lots of balls that we all have in the air, and that is creating tension. And tension is going to result in conflict. And in lots of cases, unintended conflict. With this situation, I don't know if it's happening to you, it's definitely happening to me. Nerves are frayed. We're shorter fused. We're less tolerant with each other. Words I'm hearing more often is people are crabby. People are prickly. People are not their best self. Certainly there are moments where I've not been my best self, and I look and say, there's some good reasons for that. So if this is how you're feeling, it's pretty normal. We've all been riding a roller coaster. There are going to be days when we lose it. And then all of a sudden you're going to be fine. And then you go bonkers, you go crazy again, and then you're okay. You struggle, you've got that pit in your stomach, you've got a tension headache, you're not sleeping, and all of a sudden you find a piece of calm. This is a roller coaster that we're all on, and this situation actually sort of equalizes us in that we're all feeling this. So it's a time for compassion for ourselves. It's a time for compassion for each other, because we're all on this similar roller coaster of uncertainty and loss and fear. What happens is we overreact, we get defensive, and it has nothing to do with the current situation. I had this situation a few weeks ago. I've got a dear friend who's out visiting their daughter in LA, helping provide support while the daughter is dealing with terminal cancer. And this father's birthday was during that time. His favorite pie is blueberry pie, which I typically make for him for his birthday. So I found a baker in LA to make a blueberry pie and ordered it to be ready on his birthday. I then heard from someone that the bakery was closed on Tuesdays. So I called on Monday, left a message. The message said, "We'll see you on Wednesday." So I started to doubt myself. Did I do it right? Did I make that arrangement on the right day? And left a message, probably with a little bit of shakiness in my voice, because that pie was important. And the baker called back 5 minutes later and said, "Yes, Jean, of course, we have an agreement. I'm going to be baking that day. I'll be back in the kitchen, and just have them call ahead. The pie will be ready." Well, I could hardly get off the phone without crying, sobbing, and sobbed for quite a while. And actually what I realized, it was not about the pie. Those tears, that reaction was not about the pie. It was about a lot of other things. And maybe this has happened to you, where you find yourself reacting to someone or something that really has nothing to do with that. It has to do with a pile of stuff that you've been sitting on. It has to do with some needs that you have that go unexpressed. So this is a time when we do blow things out of proportion, when we kind of lose it, and it has nothing to do with what's going on or who's in front of us. So be aware of that for yourself and cut yourself a compassionate break. Another friend of mine found a hole in their favorite sheets and freaked out. It was really not about the sheets. It was about a lot of other things. So that's what's happening to us. And that can create conflict. What is conflict? Conflict is about differences. It's about the differences that we have in what we want, what we need, what we think, what concerns us. Of course, as human beings, we're going to have differences. That is normal. And we need to learn how to manage these differences, how to understand them, how to appreciate them, and how to get each other's needs met so that we can coexist well. Sorry. Here's one thing about conflict I need you to know. If you sit on it and it's important to you, it will not go away. So putting it under the rug, which we like to do, and we tend to do that in the Midwest quite a bit, is conflict is not something we're terribly comfortable with. And so know that by not dealing with it, it's not going to go anywhere. It's going to actually multiply, as I mentioned. So in the world of conflict, we've got three sort of options on a continuum. We can fight, we can flight, or we can freeze. And I want you to think about where you fall on that continuum. It, excuse me, it might depend on the situation, it might depend on the person. But we've got some options that we pick in conflict. It's important to identify what are the sources of conflict for one reason. We can't problem solve if we don't know what the problem is. So I've listed out what are some typical sources of conflict, and I put some on the top because of our current situation with this pandemic. We're working at home and we're together. We're together a lot. And someone the other day said, maybe too much of a good thing. You're together with people that you've not been together with this often, and you're starting to realize some of their habits that you find annoying, some of their habits that just rub you the wrong way. Kids are now at home and kids are distance learning. Parents, that's a struggle. That's a challenge. That is a big deal to help your children distance learn. We have a lot of different roles. We are father, mother, son, daughter, a teacher, an entertainer. All of a sudden, being at home, there are lots of balls you have in the air. We're a laundress, we're a cook. So how do we manage all of those different roles? That can create conflict. When we're at home, we have some unmet needs that create conflict. We have a need for privacy. People are on a lot of Zoom calls for work. They need quiet. They need space that they can call their own, that they can retreat to and do their work and do their thinking. People need understanding from each other. They need appreciation. They need others to show them respect. We all need social connection. We're social beings. We are wired for connection. We're wired for goodness. And we're wired to be our best self. And this time that we're in challenges that. And we have a need for fun. And some are having fun, but those are unmet needs for others. So if you look at that list of unmet needs in your own home setting, look to see how normal it is if you have conflict in that setting when you have unmet needs. And the important thing is to figure out how to get those needs met. By now, we've been into this long enough, you've probably figured out how to carve out some space to do your work. some space for yourself, some private space to be with yourself. Other sources of conflict is priorities. What I think is number one is not what you think is number one. You can see that at home, you can see that at work. Distance communications, the most solid, connected way to communicate with someone is face-to-face. You can see how they're responding. You get some vibes about how they're feeling. You can comment about that. And when we're distant from each other, we miss that connection. We miss the ability to really communicate wholly with each other and see that whole person. Another source of conflict right now is health and safety concerns. People are afraid for their health, and that creates conflict. Someone gets too close to you. If you believe that wearing masks are important and you see someone that doesn't wear a mask, you might give them a look. A lack of routine and structure. I find, especially from a workout standpoint, missing a workout routine is stressful for me because that created some positive self-management structure for me. And I'm not as structured about that on my own, and I really miss that routine. And I haven't found a way to make up the difference that's working for me. So that creates stress for me. Other sources of conflict are just our differences of who we are. Personalities. You're going to run into more personality clashes the more you're together. Are what we think, how we believe about certain situations creates conflict. What we expect from each other, the shoulding. I think you should do this. You think I should do this. You think I shouldn't do this. So expectations that are not clear create conflict. And then we make assumptions about what someone is doing, why they're doing it, what they're thinking. And those assumptions might not be true, probably aren't 100% true. And if you don't check those assumptions out, you're off behaving based on what you're assuming about that person. So understand first what's the source of conflict. Make sure that you're clear about that. Now I want to turn the spotlight on you. The first part of managing conflict is managing yourself and understanding yourself. So this next piece, I want to talk about you. So turn the webcam onto yourself and ask yourself, how do you behave when you're under stress, a time of uncertainty, pressure? So if you look at a continuum and you're in this situation that creates conflict for you, on a continuum in communication, where are you? Do you get quiet and not want to talk to anyone? Or are you on the other end where you're all wound up and you can't stop talking? Both of those are going to create an interactive result with other people, but where are you when you're under pressure, stress, uncertainty? How about your sleep? Look at your continuum of sleep. Can you not sleep during times like this when there's some conflict? Or on the other side, do you sleep a lot? Now let's look at nutrition and food. Do you eat too much? There's just a line at my house to the refrigerator all the time, no matter what time. Or do you eat, or can you not eat? Does the stress, the pressure, the uncertainty, the conflict create a situation where you don't want to eat? So look at yourself and ask, what happens to me? During these times, what is your mind saying? Is your mind saying, this is awful, this is horrible, this is never going to work out? Check your mind, because your mind sets your feelings and your feelings set your behavior. So you might need to spend some time checking your mind and seeing what it's saying and how that is setting you up for your behavior and your reaction. Now ask yourself, as you see yourself, what impact does your behavior have on your family members and on your coworkers? Children and pets pick up our behavior. They're like sponges for our moods. I had a friend the other day say, even the dog is different. The dog is confused. So be careful knowing that you are setting for your children kind of a model of behavior. They're going to be watching. They're in tune with where you're at. So how do you stay strong for your children? If you're in management, how do you stay strong for your employees? They're going to look to you for stability and for direction. So again, go up above to those questions and ask yourself, how am I? And what impact does that have on others? And how is what my mind is saying? How does that impact how I am? Now let's keep the spotlight on you and let's look at your triggers. Where are you vulnerable to triggers? What are one or two things that trigger you? What sets you off? And when you're triggered, what happens to you? Do you strike out at the world? What do you do? Part of self-management is just knowing ourselves first so that we can deal with ourselves. What you don't want to have is a blind spot and not understand yourself. It's a scotoma, it's a blind spot. So understand what sets you off. Once you understand your triggers, you can now be aware that you're triggered. You can spotlight on yourself and notice how you're reacting. And we'll talk about that in a minute, but now you can manage and control your reactions. Again, spotlight still on yourself in this immediate environment. What are your pressure points? What are the things that are pushing on you? Is it finances? Is it the job? Is it family commitments? Is it ill parents? What is pushing on you? These are all things that go into determining your reaction, your behavior at this time. So again, resolving conflicts starts with managing yourself. Versus the first thing we often want to do is look at somebody else and blame them. I'm going to ask you to start with yourself first. You have been successful in your past managing and weathering difficult times. So take a look at your past and ask, where has it worked for you to manage a difficult time? What did you do? How did you recover? How were you resilient? What served you well? That's what you're going to need to call on now. The fact that we've all weathered difficult times gives us hope in this situation that we will find a path, we will move forward through this together and get on the other side of it, just like we have other things in our lives. That gives us confidence. So in life, you can control only one thing, and that's yourself. It starts with controlling your thinking. How are you thinking about a certain situation? How are you thinking about a certain person? Your thoughts create your feelings, and your feelings create your behavior. If you want to change your behavior, you need to change how you think about it. If you need help in shifting your thinking about a certain situation, talk to someone that you trust. Share with them your thinking. Ask them if it's the truth. Get some perspective. But you control one thing, and that's you. So that cuts out blame. We need to first look at ourselves. So it's all about impulse control. If I need to manage myself, the first thing I need to do is manage my impulses. And the best way to do that is take a pause, is step away and take a pause. While you're in that pause, take a breath. Find your breath, move your shoulders out of your ears, and breathe. It helps me if I put one hand on my chest, one hand on my stomach, breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4. It's a way for me to self-nurture because I'm putting my hand on my chest. So I'm soothing, self-soothing, and I'm breathing 4, 4, 4. Whatever you need to do, find yourself paused and calmed out. Another place I go when I'm in my pause is I go to nature. I take a walk around the lake. Nature for me is very soothing. It's a place for me to reflect. It's a place for me to hear myself. So just ask yourself, what do you need to do? What do you do that gets yourself in control? You want to move yourself into the rational zone before you have a conversation with someone around a difference, a disagreement, or a conflict. Don't do it unless you're in your rational zone, and whatever you need to do to get there, whether you play certain music, whether you talk to someone that you trust, whether you exercise, find an interest that you love, that gives you joy, something to move you into your calmed out, rational zone. What you don't want to do is take on a conflict, have a conversation when you're feeling really badly angry, short-fused, not breathing calmly. You don't want to have conversation. Now, certain things may trigger you and push you into those intense bad feelings. That's fine, that's human. So rather than continue the conversation, what you would say to someone is, I just got triggered. I need some time to think. I need some time to calm myself out. The opposite of intense bad feelings is you're feeling kind of so light and so kind of whatever. I don't really care, kind of whatever. That is not a good time to have a conversation that's important and that's difficult. So if you really don't care, don't enter into that conversation. Move yourself into that rational zone. We need to find ways that take good care of ourselves so that we're our best self when we enter into a difficult conflict conversation. So here are some ways that we can take care of ourselves. The first thing you can do is acknowledge your feelings. We are feeling beings. We are emotional beings. And give yourself space to feel. Have conversations with yourself. Have conversations with others that you trust. to identify those feelings, acknowledge those feelings, and accept those feelings. Be compassionate toward yourself with those feelings. Show yourself grace with those feelings. Be careful of the voice that is shaming around feelings, that is shoulding about how to feel and not to feel. Honor yourself by honoring those feelings. Get yourself a routine. I have to say, 8 weeks later, I'm not in my best routines yet. But having some kind of routine is helpful. I said earlier, we are connected beings. We are wired for connection. We're not wired for isolation. And isolation is a struggle. So stay connected. FaceTime with people that you miss. Seeing someone's face, hearing their voice, seeing their reaction to you, your reaction to them, that feeds our connection as human beings. That is something we've been missing for many weeks. That is taking its toll. Limit your media. Define how many hours you're going to watch, and that's it. Exercise. Whatever you can do. Lots of people are walking. Lots of people, when they're walking, they're seeing other people. Those are good things. Pay attention to your nutrition. Feed your body good food so that you're fueled to be able to be your best self. Get good sleep. Give encouragement to others. There's some interesting research on what happens to the endorphins when you give encouragement and support to other people. Watch a funny movie. Do something that is humorous. Watch your posture. It's one of those things you can control. So keeping your ears over your shoulders, keeping your chest up and out so that your head is not hanging forward and putting pressure on your back. Volunteer and help someone. It will take you out of yourself. Again, learning something new is a wonderful stress management strategy. A lot of people are trying new things. They're going to YouTube and various websites to learn new things, try new things. The hardware stores are busy. People are doing projects. Find things that you find relaxing and healing and enjoyable. Things that nourish you. Whatever that is, there are lots of things that each of us can find that nourishes us. My garden has been such a helpful contributor to my well-being during this time. Now, remember our roller coaster. We are all going to go bonkers and have a little craziness every single day. So allow some time to go bonkers every day. And then find time to reflect and calm yourself out. We were talking about this bonkers time with a friend, and he went on a business trip driving to Wisconsin and had about an hour and a half in the car. So he said he turned up the tunes really loud, sang loud enough that when he got there, his voice was hoarse, and then he was good. He was happy. He drove back home, has 2 children, said to his wife, I had my time. I want you to have your time for yourself. Go do something for yourself. And when you take care of yourself and you help take care of each other, then you can be your best selves when it's time to have a conversation that might be a little difficult. Self-coaching is your own voice to yourself. Sometimes I have to say to myself, focus. Other times I have to say, I can do this. And then, of course, if you can find a trusted therapist, and they can help you too. So ask yourself, when you look back and you say, what are my triggers? What's my response to stress, pressure, uncertainty, and conflict? What's one thing that you could do more of that's already helping you? And what's one thing that you could do less of that isn't helping you? So we've now spent time looking at you. And now we're going to look at the strongest, most effective approach to conflict resolution, which is collaboration. Research shows us that when we collaborate, we come out with better results together. We come out with more positive relations, because spending time together builds that relationship, helps us understand each other. It provides a balance. So when you're in collaboration with someone else, they're going to balance you. They're going to give you a different perspective. When we're together, we get to unleash the synergies and creative solutions that we can come up with together. We are truly better together. Collaboration is a skill. It's something you can learn. It's a powerful, positive process to use to resolve conflicts. Communication is what gets us into conflict. Communication is the only way out of conflict. The only way out of conflict is through it by conversation, through it by communication. So resolving conflicts is basically having a conversation. Having a respectful, open, honest conversation and listening to understand the other person. So you're all at this webinar, so I'm going to say to you, now that you've heard this, it starts with you. One person has to start to be the listener. So before you can express all of your feelings and all of your needs, it needs to start with you. The way to earn someone else listening to you is for you to first listen to them. It's already uncomfortable having a conflict, a disagreement, or a difference, or a frustration. So I'm going to ask you to get comfortable being uncomfortable and having the courage to start that conversation. When you're in conversation with the other person, remember that you're playing for the same team. You're in this together. So find a common goal. The common goal in your family is to have a happy family life together, satisfying, loving. Your common goal at work is your shared outcome, whether it's for customers, clients, production. What's the shared goal? What brings us together? Let's find a common energy and figure out, how do we take care of ourselves together and come through this as strong as possible? How do we come together interdependently? We count on each other. And how do we solve this problem together in a collaborative, joint way? So I want you to kind of Put your headset on, your collaborative headset on. It's going to create a collaborative mindset. And what that collaborative headset says is we all are of value. So if we look back at our table, everyone here is of value, equal value as a human being. Everyone's thoughts and ideas matter. Everyone's needs matter. No one's more important than the other in the collaborative setting. In that setting, everyone needs to be heard. And when we're listening, we need to check for understanding. People often say 30% of the time what they're really thinking. So you have to probe. Make sure that you understand what they're saying. Ask for and share your thoughts and tell people what your why is. Why do you feel that way? How is it that you think that way? When we're collaborating, you need to make it safe to voice differing opinions. We're different as people. Our backgrounds are different. Our upbringing is different. Of course, we're going to bring differences to that collaborative table. Make it safe to have differences, because the energy of creative solutions is in those differences. Together, explore new ways of doing things, new approaches. Together, find a solution. Have it be win-win so that everyone feels good about the outcome. When you do that, it fosters a unity that we're all in this together, and it fosters a sense that we all belong here. No one's left out. When you're collaborating, these are the things you need to bring to this process. Bring your patience. Exercise your compassion muscle. Be open. Be willing to understand the other person and show respect. These must be apparent when you're in a collaborative setting. So in that collaborative setting, be vulnerable. Share what you think. Share what you feel. Share what you need. Share what you want. Be courageous to share. And secondly, be curious. Be open and interested in that other person. What do they think? What do they feel? What do they want and need? And remember, there's more than one right way to do things. There's more than one right reality. Your reality is not the only reality. Another person's reality, they have a right to that. We were given 2 ears and 1 mouth. You need to use it in that way when you're collaborating. Listen more than you talk. Be very quick to listen. Be very slow to speak. When you're listening, listen to understand. And when you don't understand, ask clarifying questions. So in collaboration, you're going to look in at yourself. What's your impact? What's going on for you? You're going to look out at the other person. What's going on for them? How are they thinking? What are they needing? What's important to them? How do they see it? Collaboration is rational problem solving together. So the format is this. You together identify what's the source of the conflict. Make sure that you're really clear about that together. How do each of you contribute to it? Each one of you has a piece of that. What can you control within solving that conflict? And what can each of you do to help solve that conflict? If you use this as a map to walk through the situation, this will help clarify it for you. What isn't going to help when you're in the collaborative process is criticizing, blaming, and shoulding. Be careful to not do that to yourself, and be careful to not do that to other people. Communication is a full body expression, or a full person expression, sorry. 55% of how we communicate is our body language. So when we can't see the person, we're missing 55% of how they're communicating. 38% is voice and 7% are words. Words matter. What words you choose matter, and how you say those words with the voice tone, pitch, rate, volume. That makes a difference. So again, turn the webcam on yourself, spotlight on yourself, and watch how do you communicate when you're collaborating with someone about a conflict. What's your body language doing? What's happening to your voice? 93% body language and voice. And then what words are you choosing? So when we're in the collaborative process, we want to focus on partnership and not creating defensiveness. So is any part of your delivery creating defensiveness in that other person? Are the words that you're choosing, is the way you're saying it, can that at all be a trigger for someone else? So own your part. And then remember, go back to what are your triggers? Understand yourself. Understand when you're triggered. When you go into a conversation, I want you to strap on what I call your puke shield. This protects your soul, your sense of self, from taking another person's words or behavior personally. It will help you not get triggered as much if you have your shield up to protect yourself. And we all need to develop a little thicker skin. This is a time of high emotion, of high reactivity. And be gracious, be compassionate. It's a difficult time for people. So what I'd like you to do is write down one action that you could take, one thing that you could do immediately that would make the environment that you're in, whether you're thinking today about work or personal, a more positive place and lessen the conflict. What could you do? Just one thing. This is my compassionate assumption about all of us. We are all doing the best we can. These are trying times. These are triggering times. Yes, we can all improve how we're doing things if we're willing, if we get some insight, if we learn. Today you're learning some knowledge to be able to do something a little differently, and if we have support. We can make changes. We can make positive changes for how we are together. The most important thing is how we are with each other. That creates the foundation for us to be able to collaboratively, jointly problem solve and to move through this. It's important that we find a path together through our differences. We must find a path. There'll be moments on this path that we get stuck, and we have to find a way to keep moving, to find a path through the conflicts. We do that by understanding each other, taking the time to understand each other. by learning from each other. We're not enough. I'm not enough. In any situation, I know I'm not enough. I don't bring enough skill, knowledge, experience to be able to do it myself. None of us can. Be careful not to go it alone. So if we understand each other, we can learn from each other, we value each other, we create a peaceful coexistence among our differences. That's an important thing for our lives. It's an important thing for our country. It's an important thing for our world. So these are the words that I say to myself that I'd like to ask you to say to yourself as you look at resolving conflicts. It takes some courage to lean into it, to enter into these conversations, but I can do it. I want to do it because I want it to be better, and I will do it. So if you can repeat that to yourself, I can do this. I can do something difficult and uncomfortable. I can do it. I want to do it. This is hard. This is uncomfortable, but I want to do it because I care about the relationships that I'm in. I care about my own sense of peace and well-being. And I want to contribute to the whole in a better way so that we can get to resolution and move forward together. And then finally, I will do it. So think of the one thing you picked to do and find a way to do that. I appreciate the opportunity to share some of this with you today. And what I would say to you is be well, be peace, and help find a hopeful way forward. Help find a way. Lisa, do you have some questions?
I do. Thank you so much, Jean, for your words of wisdom. We will move into the Q&A portion, and there have been a lot of questions, so I'm trying to get through the ones that have been asked so far. So the first question is, can feelings be controlled or monitored? So how do you gain control of an emotion, especially in the heat of a moment or a highly charged conversation?
Yes, and that's so human to have big emotions. The first one, again, is to spotlight on yourself and notice you're having a big emotion. Just first notice it, own it, find your breath, start to breathe. You might in that moment need to ask for a moment to get yourself in control. And you do that by breathing. You could take a break. You could go to the restroom. You could ask for some time to get yourself to just, I need a little time. I need some time. But the first is noticing what's happening to you in a very self-loving way. Be kind to yourself at that point. There's nothing wrong with that. It's human. And then how do I manage it? Is I would manage it by 1, noticing, 2, starting to manage my breath. And 3, I'd have to go back to my mind and say, what's my mind saying that is creating this emotion? And have a conversation with myself around what's going on right now. What are you thinking? And maybe I need to shift how I think, to shift how I feel, to shift how I'm reacting. And often I need time to do that. I need to pull back and I need time to do that. And I ask for time. I say, you know what, this isn't a good time for me, or I'd like to take some time and I'd like to come back to this tomorrow or later. But ask for what you need to get yourself in positive personal control.
Well, thank you, Jean. The next question is for the conflict averse people out there.
There are lots of us. Yep.
So one viewer said that they themselves get emotional during honest discussions and even feel it isn't really an emotional request or issue that they're bringing up, but it just makes the communication difficult when they're talking about it. So what
Sure.
communication steps can we take to express ourselves and still maintain harmony?
And maintain that personal control of ourself. I will say what I do, and I've been doing this for lots of years. I practice every situation that I need to bring up a conversation about something that's difficult, uncomfortable. I practice. I write the words out. I might be at a coffee shop and write them on a napkin. I write them out and I practice, and I hear myself say those words with myself. And then at that point, yes, emotion does come up. I feel those words, but I practice a lot. And during that practice time, I feel emotion sometimes. And that's the time to work it through. You don't want it to be the first time you're saying it with yourself, with that person. So if you've got something you need to say, think about it, practice, hear those words that are kind of triggered, charged, emotional words, and let your cells get used to that. Give your mind and your body a chance to experience it. If you can, if this is possible, experience it before, because you will not be as emotional in the moment if you've had a chance to practice it with yourself and feel the emotion of all those words by yourself or with someone else that you trust. If you find in the moment that you're getting emotionally triggered by something, again, go back to our last question, is notice your emotion. If you're uncomfortable with it and you'd rather not continue, and take a pause, step back, go away and manage yourself, get yourself in your rational zone, and then come back. That's so normal. It's so normal. And the other thing is, sometimes if I'm having an emotional response to something, I just push through that emotion. It's not pretty, it's okay, and I get through it and I continue having a conversation. And I would own it and say, you can see that this is triggering an emotion in me. This is difficult. This conversation is important to me. I'm going to continue to have this conversation in the best way I can, and it's emotional for me.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Really good question.
Yeah. The next questions I've kind of bundled into one, and it's more about reactions from others. So, how do you manage conflict when you have the skills to do so, but other person may not? So how do you deal with someone who may be fighting or in that fight mode when you're trying to have a conversation?
Sure.
Or ask someone for time or space to cool down and they refuse to give that to you?
Okay. So a couple of things about that. One is you're dealing with another human being who's complex. We're all complex. You're dealing with another human being who has their own triggers. And so notice that something that you said triggered that person. And you, again, finding the words to not create defensiveness, but to create partnership and relationship, is you might say, I can see that something I just said didn't sit well with you or triggered you. Can you help me understand that? I can see that this is important to you. So go into understanding what's happening with that person, because feelings are attached to needs. So when a person's needs are met, you're going to see happy, relaxed behavior. When people's needs are not met, you're going to see bigger, more triggered reactions. So in that big reaction of that other person are needs. So put your puke shield up. Don't take this personally. This isn't about you. Is go into understanding. ask questions. Here's a couple of interesting things. The more you listen, the less angry you will become. The more you listen to another person and they feel heard and understood and valued, the temperature will drop, the tension will reduce. So go into a listening and understanding mode with your puke shield up.
That's great. We have a lot more questions, but I guess I will ask one question in case viewers have questions and they want to reach out to you. So what is the best way to get in contact or reach out to you about these specific questions that viewers might have over conflict resolution?
I'm absolutely happy to answer all those questions. My goal is to help you get comfortable in the uncomfortable. So I would like to spend time answering those questions. You can email me at jean@jeanmorrisonhr.com. And then I can take a look at your question. And if I feel it would be better to have conversation, then I can invite us to have conversation. But I'd rather spend whatever time necessary getting those questions answered, because this is a big, hairy topic. This is just an uncomfortable topic that is normal and human, and it exists, and we have to find a way. And it's learnable. That's the cool thing, is this is a teachable skill. It's a group of layered skills to be good at conflict resolution. You got to be a good self-managing. You have to be a good listener. You have to be good at courageously bringing something up. But it's a layered, complex group of skills that are all teachable.
Yeah, and would you be able to one more time repeat that email address?
Sure.
Jean?
It's Jean, Jean, at jeanmorrisonhr.com.
Thank you.
Yep.
And then I will ask a couple more questions, and then
Sure. I'll stay as long as you want me to.
okay. So one of them is more about dominance. So the question is, how do you deal with conflict if someone has some sort of dominance over you, such as a landlord, a boss, a supervisor, and also, are we responsible for managing these kind of perceptions about dominance that people have of someone else or of yourself?
Okay, I didn't quite understand the second part of it, Lisa, but let's come back to that one. Let me go to the first one, is what do we do when we're confronting a situation and we're in a lower power situation? Something like that. So someone has power over us. Most important thing, again, what I said earlier, is how we think determines how we feel, determines how we act. So if you go back to how you think about yourself in a situation when you're in a lower power situation, is you're not in a lower power situation as a human being. You're in an equal power situation as a human being, and you deserve to be treated like you have equal power as a human being, equal value as a human being. So because someone has power over you doesn't give them the right to treat you like you are less valuable. That's important for all of us. It's important for our own sense of self. So I would go into any situation, whether I'm dealing with as a CEO of a company, I go in thinking I am of equal value as a human being. And I want to treat that person that way, and I want to be treated that way. So when you're going into a situation where you have lower power just by position, Go in believing and knowing that you have equal power as a human being. That's important. And that you need to be treated respectfully and with value. When you encounter behavior that is disrespectful or that devalues you, it's then time for you to have a conversation and say, I'm uncomfortable. That's not working for me. Here's what I need from you. I need you to talk to me like this. I need you to sit with me like this. Ask for what you need to be treated of equal value as a human being, whatever that is. So you want to ask them to either stop doing X and start doing X. What is it that you need to be treated equally valued? Can you repeat that second part of that question, Lisa, so I make sure I really get it?
Yeah, absolutely. My apologies. I asked it in a very weird way.
That's okay.
So basically, are we responsible for, or are we able to manage perceptions and assumptions that other people have of us?
Okay, so I would spotlight myself and ask myself, is my behavior or my expression developing a perception at all about myself that's different than what I know about myself or the one that I want? So is there any way that I am being that's impacting, that's creating a different perception of myself than the one that I want to create? Is there a gap there? So I'd have to look at that, look at myself. And if another person is treating me in a way that they are dominant over me, then I would have to take responsibility for expressing my feelings about that treatment and ask for what I need them to do differently to treat me in a way that I believe is right for me, that is worthy for me. So just because someone is acting dominant over me doesn't mean what I have to do is take responsibility for accepting that or not, and asking for their behavior to be different according to what's important to me as a self-respecting, self-loving person. And if you go back to that page on body language and voice and words, think about when you need to say something to someone who's being dominant, what words you need to use, how do you need to say those words, and what body language do you need to use. That's why I prepare a lot. I think about it. I think about the words. I think about the voice, and I think about the body language. I get prepared before I bring it up. It takes a while to understand what are your needs. What are the needs that what's making you uncomfortable? The fact that you're uncomfortable tells us that your need isn't met, and probably that need for being treated with respect isn't met. So now what would they do more of, and what would they do less of to treat you the way you need to be treated? Good question.
Yeah, thank you so much for answering that, Jean. And we'll actually go to the next slide. And
okay.
What we'll do is, again, just want to thank everyone so much for listening today. As I mentioned earlier, we will be sending a link to the webinar recording in a couple of days. I want to thank Jean for your time and your incredibly useful information. I know this has really helped me out as well. Our next webinar will actually be on June 3rd, and the topic will be on resilience. So you'll all receive an email with the details of this next webinar soon. And Jean, I'll just say one more time, can you repeat your email address?
Sure. It's Jean, Jean, at JeanMorrison.com.
Thank you so much, Jean.
And I'm happy, really happy for the questions. Would love to be helpful.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon. Take care and stay safe.